So why do publishers seem so insistent on releasing their same games over and over again? Gamers have become conditioned to expect that publishers will re-release old games to modern hardware, and rather than just make a simple port or a patch, they tend to put a lot of effort into them and market them as a whole new experience. To list a few recent examples, remakes in the past 5 years have included games like Ratchet & Clank, Resident Evil, Shadow of the Colossus, Tony Hawk, Crash Bandicoot, and Skyrim for what feels like 11 different times. Most recently is the Grand Theft Auto trilogy, coming out on November 11th, and it looks to be quite an upgrade from the previous editions. This is interesting because the GTA trilogy is already readily available on multiple platforms, including PS4 and iOS and Android devices. Perhaps informed by the incredible success of GTA 5, which similarly saw a slew of re-releases over the past decade, Rockstar might want to position the original trilogy in a similar way. But if they already exist on a previous generation of hardware, why go for the dramatic re-release in the first place? It's worth exploring why do game publishers choose this route when bringing their old games to modern hardware. A common argument used to explain this are the perceived financial incentives that come from re-releasing a game. Video games are often very expensive and a very risky endeavor that can take years of development time as well as hundreds of millions of dollars. A new property like Cyberpunk 2077 took 8 years and almost $111 million. This has been a huge financial risk to CD Projekt Red and will take years of further work to restore their old reputation after its disastrous launch. Even games based on sure-thing properties, like Crystal Dynamics' Avengers game, can be a huge flop and lose over $60 million due to a lack of sales. But re-releasing an old game, which has proven to be successful in sales and already has a known quantity of fans, can be a very safe bet. It can almost guarantee sales, and even old properties with relative obscure IPs like Destroy All Humans can be big hits. Re-releases are also otherwise cheap to produce, as a significant element of the development costs are already taken care of. For a publisher with a slew of properties in their back catalog, the choice to re-release an old game with some minor improvements can be very cheap, but an effective way to generate a lot of consumer goodwill and some solid revenue. It can help achieve yearly sales targets and buttress the development of original but risky IP. But I think there's a deeper reason to why games have to be remade, and that's consumer expectations. Modern expectations towards video games is higher than it has ever been before, and gamers almost demand the ability to play any game they want on any platform they want. Any deviation from these sets of demands leads to anger and frustration towards the developers. Video games being released today typically don't get remade. Instead, they just adapt and improve to how people are playing them and make changes in response to customer feedback on the fly. Games like Fortnite and Apex Legends, which released in 2017 and 2019, continuously add new features and characters to keep people playing them, and they consistently come to new platforms when they're available. They're able to do this because the financial model for these games, which brings a consistent revenue throughout the whole year, enables this ongoing, endless development cycle. Old games have the same expectations placed on them. If a developer wants their players to be continuously engaged with a game for a long period of time, then they need to find a way to continuously offer updates and changes to support new trends in the medium and new hardware as it's released. But the financial model for these old games don't support this. Old games like the GTA trilogy or Skyrim, when they were originally released, were paid for once and then expected to be played for years. Developers needed a way to bring these changes that the customers wanted, like the ability to play on modern hardware as it was released, or ongoing bug fixes or other kind of support. The only way they can do this for games that don't have a live service model attached to them is to do these dramatic re-releases. Skyrim is a perfect example on how this trend works in practice. Gamers wanted the ability to keep playing this game for over a decade, and they wanted the game to continuously evolve and adapt to new trends in gaming. This included moving to new hardware like the Nintendo Switch and the PS5 when it was available, and it also included doing things like adding player-developed mods on console as well as VR support. The Mass Effect trilogy is another good example. The games exist on all platforms and support modern trends like in-game achievements, but players demand more, and the Legendary Edition brings the trilogy to the latest hardware and has the graphical capabilities in line with contemporary releases. The The Legendary Edition also makes other changes, such as to the combat mechanics and to vehicle handling. Design choices in the original game, like restricting weapons to certain classes, are gone in order to conform with modern expectations. For a game to be released in 2021, it needs to have these kind of updates, even if it is originally a 14-year-old game. To do this kind of ongoing work, the ongoing development cycle is needed, and this can only be achieved if games exist under a financial model that supports this, like a live service or a subscription. This is the exact same thing that occurred to software development. Once it was discovered that consumer expectations demand ongoing support for new platforms, as well as the endless service requests and security updates as vulnerabilities were discovered, the financial model of a one-time payment was completely unsustainable. This is why software transitioned to a software as a service financial model, and it's why products like Adobe or Microsoft Office ask for a yearly subscription rather than a one-time payment. As changes to the medium continue to happen, whether that be trends in gaming behavior or hardware upgrades like new platforms, gamers will keep wanting to play their old games in a way that matches the contemporary expectations. So as long as people want to keep playing their old games and these games continue to release under their old financial model, I predict that we will see re-releases continue to happen for the foreseeable future. Game publishers will continue to rely on re-releasing old games because consumer expectations for them are too high. Game developers need a way to make these changes and offer the continuous updates that are demanded, and a dramatic re-release strategy is the only way they can do this. I think that subscription services like Xbox Game Pass or Nintendo Switch Online could offer a possible solution. These subscription costs fund the necessary changes required for the games, while also ensuring that they get transferred to new platforms as they become available. It might not be the model that everyone's comfortable with, but at least it'll allow games like GTA Trilogy or Skyrim to be played forever and ever. But that's just what I think about the state of video game re-releases. Let me know if you disagree and why, or whether or not you think this is a positive trend. I'll see you guys next time.